Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. I am your host, Nick Koziol, and joining me today, very excited to have Orrin Lieuwen with Lionheart Leadership. Thanks for being on the show, Orrin.
Thanks, Nick. I am excited to be here today.
Cool. So we started chatting a couple days ago, actually, connected a while before that, and took a little time for us to connect. And I loved what I was hearing about, the way that you're trying to transform and enhance lives through a variety of different ways and a kind of a method that you have. So I would love to hear a little bit about you and how you kind of came to start this leadership program.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a good place to start, is to go all the way back to the beginning. And, when I was younger, when I was growing up, a lot of crazy stories, of people overcoming difficulties starts with, a traumatic story or a harrowing experience. And I don't have any of those. But what sticks out to me about my early life is not what happened, but what didn't happen. There was just, I felt like I was not an extraordinary student, an extraordinary child, or an extraordinary friend. I had this desire for adventure, for heroic deeds. I would bury myself for hours in my books, in my video games. In those alternate universes, I would find these feelings. But in my own life, it was dull. And I had some difficulties connecting. I had some social anxieties at school. I grew up on a small farm, 30 kilometers out of town, and so I just didn't develop socially, or had difficulties with academically, and then also athletically. And so all these things, Nick, as I came into adulthood, there was this underlying sense that there's probably competent people out there, but I'm not one of them. There's people out there who are going to accomplish great things, and I'm not one of them. And just this sense stuck with me for a number of years. And as I got into the world of personal development and emotional intelligence, and specifically neurolinguistic programming, really as I learned to draw out those deeper beliefs that I had about myself, those negative beliefs, and to change them, that really changed everything. I had a deep sense of passion, deep sense of purpose, and that really enabled me to really be a guy who believes positive things about me. And I experienced life in a whole different way that I did back then. And so the long answer to your question, coming back, is what my program is helping people experience in weeks what it took me years to figure out.
Very cool. Very cool. So was there, going back in time to those moments, was there like this pivotal aha that you had that kind of led to you producing this program? Or, can you talk a little bit about that process and like how you went from I'm not going to be able to make an impact to I am going to be the person that helps others make an impact?
Right. Well, I think as any person's really journey of personal growth is, there was a lot of like breakthrough moments, but one in particular, I think that was a bit of a turning point, is my wife and I. We had a weekend, had some friends who had a nice fancy house, and they were away, and they invited us to just stay in their place. It was a bit of a getaway for us. And we were having a conversation. I don't remember exactly what the conversation was about. Might have been a bit of an argument. And my wife, she said to me, she said, "Orrin, if I want to know facts and information," she said, "I can go to Google." She says, "But I want to know who you are. I want to know, what are the things that you're feeling? Who are you?" And it struck me because in conversations for my whole life, I could tell people what I thought, but I couldn't really tell people what I felt because I wasn't aware of that. And so that was a bit of just a ton of bricks that got dropped on my head saying, okay, like this is something that I need to figure out. This is something that I'm going to need to go on a search and to understand. And this is important. And so that was one of those moments. And then the next week, she found in a bookstore the book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, which is one of the classics, the forerunner books in this topic, which really opened up this world for us.
Very nice. Very nice. So a lot of times our significant others or the people that, know and love us are the first ones to kind of help push us over that edge where we need to go. But we still need to be willing, right? So it's neat that you were able to kind of have that argument or that relationship or something to that effect to kind of get you to that next step. Your note taker just tried to come back in again, so I was distracted. Which I will throw out there to the audience. I love this thing that I first saw from Orrin, this Fathom note taker. I love that, and I'm definitely looking into like the possibility of using that. So
there we go.
Yeah. So all right, so you got this book, you're figuring out who you are, and you're like ready to kind of start like Lionheart Leadership. How did you get that to kind of get going? What was like the first couple steps that you took? So a lot of our show is about explaining to our listeners how maybe they can do something similar if they wanted to.
Yeah. So there's a big in the middle, right,
Sure.
of what was happening. So as I emerged into adulthood, I found myself in faith-based ministry, in Christian ministry, locally in Canada where I live, and then also overseas. And in this world, serving God, serving people, I really found a deep, deep sense of passion, a deep, deep sense of purpose, right? As you can expect, just a really deep one. But lacking those competencies and that confidence to really be able to make the difference that I wanted to make. And so it about 10 years into this journey, when I was actually overseas, I was living in India at this time with a team, a multicultural team, 15 people from 11 different nations serving together. And one of the members, he gave me a book by John Maxwell called Winning with People. And my first book by the author, John Maxwell, amazing author. Inc.com has named him the world's #1 influencer on leadership. And so I just remember reading through this book. And, Nick, it was like, the puzzle pieces started kind of clicking into place. Like I started seeing relationships a way that I've never seen them before. It's like, this is how trust was built in this relationship over here. This is what went wrong over there. And so things started really becoming clearer for me. And that was the first of many books by John Maxwell that I read. And then the whole personal development world that John thankfully introduced me to. And so I pursued this road, and the John Maxwell team, there's a certification program with John Maxwell where they introduced me to the idea of, in the business world, having a business where you're speaking, coaching, and training. And I knew that was way outside my comfort zone, like nothing like I had ever done before. But I knew that, what I was afraid to do, I knew that's what I needed to do. That was my next step in personal growth. And so that's, sometimes I tell people, what you're most afraid to do, that's your flag. That's where you're supposed to go next. That's your next opportunity for personal growth. And I mean, sometimes it's hard to really come to that place and swallow that and actually step into that. But man, I'm so thankful that I did, because really I stepped out into the business world knowing nothing. Man, no one in my family had been like entrepreneurial in business. My extended family, my friend circles, I knew nothing. I grew up in a small town of 2,000 people, right? And and so it was way out there. And it took me a while to figure it out, to be honest.
Mhm.
How does sales work? How do you actually run a business? But on the far side now, looking back, I'm so thankful for that journey and all the things that have happened, all the, even in the failures, all the things that I have learned that have brought me to this place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it is a scary thing to do something new, right?
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of things that you have to overcome in order to kind of move forward. And you need to be able to identify, like, also know yourself, like, what is it that I really want to do? What is that
Mhm.
thing? And there's trial and error, and you learn from your mistakes and setbacks and whatnot. So are there people, you mentioned John Maxwell as an author, but are there people in your life that really supported you through this, or maybe helped you over some hurdles that you can talk a little bit about?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think there's three men that have made an inordinate difference in my life. One of them is John Maxwell, but also Dan Boone and Eric Ludy. These are two men who really met me in moments of my life where, there wasn't a lot. I hadn't had a lot of mentorship growing up, and so meeting Dan Boone, he was a guy when I first, left my hometown, who really just took me under his wing. He took me seriously. He listened to me, he talked to me and really mentored me. And that was huge, to have someone mentor you. If you ever get that opportunity, that's, jump at the chance. And then also that's one of the things that I look back on is I want to be the kind of leader that I wish I had had when I was
Right.
younger. And so I'm thankful for these men, and I want to replicate what they offered to me, to others.
Yeah. No, I can totally see that in you. Like, being a mentor yourself is important to you
Hmm.
to kind of give back and pay it forward. Very cool.
Hmm.
You had mentioned a little earlier in the conversation that, you were in India and you were being influenced by a person out there. What brought you to India? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that, I mean, to go there, this really, in the world of faith-based work,
Mhm.
believing that God created us for Himself, and that we find peace and happiness and joy in that relationship with Him. And so that took me to a number of places. I was in Ukraine actually for 7.5 months, not recently,
Yeah,
um, in 2011, I believe it was,
sure.
before any of this craziness had happened, and was able to experience, this post-Soviet culture, and build friends with this cool guy named Sasha, who actually now lives in Canada. He married one of my teammates.
Oh, nice.
Um, I was able to hike in the jungle in Papua New Guinea and live with a tribe for a couple months, and eat the food that they ate, and just share life with them. And so I've had quite a few really neat experiences and neat perspectives that have helped really shape me and who I am, and see different people in different uh, cultures and contexts. And so I've
Right.
been blessed to do that, Nick, and that also really adds now to who I am. Recognizing, wow, not everyone has had this. Actually,
Mhm.
it took me a while to realize, like, wow, that these experiences that I've had are actually quite extraordinary. And to be able to tell these stories and the lessons that I learned from them actually do stand out to people. And
Right.
so that also is part of now who I am and what I offer, and recognizing that every person, you yourself, will have stories. Every person, if you take them seriously, if you ask them the right questions, they're going to have stories that are meaningful for them. They're going to have stories that shaped them and that are worth really paying attention to and telling that story.
Yeah. No, it's all about the stories, and the
Mhm,
experiences that you've had also give you those different perspectives, right? So, like, you're talking
mhm,
about different cultures and the way that people eat and the way that people perceive different actions,
mhm,
all very important things. And you know uh speaking as, a United States citizen who's, been to Canada, and that's about it. There's often, a lot of us that don't take the time to think about what cultural perspective people are coming from. Now, I've been
Yeah.
lucky to work at colleges and in pretty diverse environments where I'm exposed to culture in the United States from the people coming and visiting, or coming from the other country and actually
Mm,
becoming citizens. But it's a totally different experience, I would assume, based on
yeah.
no firsthand knowledge, actually being there and being immersed in the culture.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing about being able to go overseas and experience like the different cultures and things in the faith-based? I assume like you were, somewhat um, involved with the churches there and trying to preach out, right?
Hmm. Yeah. 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 Very much so. Um, I think just what you said, Nick, how every culture has its vices, and every culture has its unique beauties and unique things to from their culture that are so incredible, that are so human, that are so, things that we can learn from. And
Yeah.
I have just loved, with every culture, being able to learn and grow with the people. There's things that I have to offer from my culture, that really other cultures can really benefit from. And there's also things from other cultures that I have definitely learned and taken on and adapted.
Yeah.
And so really being able to stretch that out. And I also did some studies in intercultural studies, and being able to really identify what are some of those things that are under the surface. It's so amazing to be around and to rub shoulders with people that are so different from you
Mhm.
in every way possible.
Well, that's awesome. And actually you stole my follow-up question by answering it right away, like talking about like what are some aspects of cultures that you've, liked or maybe brought in, and that's part of you. So it kind of
Mhm,
makes sense, right? So let's
mhm.
get into the actual program. Like, so what do you do to help people, in transforming their beliefs and improving performance, and reading off your ticker in the background, the enhancing of lives? How do you do that? What is your program really all about?
Yeah. So I find that, every person is extremely as a human being, right? The abilities that every human being has, we are so resourceful. We are so incredibly, um, we have such incredible potential within us. And, all the motivational speakers will talk about this, but it's true. And so many people, 99% of people just, we settle. They follow the illusion that, I don't expect too much. There's not that much my life is going to amount to, and so we settle for less. And so what I'm about is helping people realize the resources that are in you. That, hey, you are made for so much more than the level that you're living. I had a conversation with uh, a man yesterday, and just was looking at him and saying, look, don't settle. And he said it, he would agree with me, but
Hmm.
it's just that fear of stepping out, and that, hey, it is challenging to take that step out. And so what I do is I offer myself as a guide to say, okay, let me give you some clarity, let me give you some steps so that you can understand that your purpose and your potential, your ability to get there, and to be able to move towards that.
Yeah. You kind of go back to that the thing we were talking about a little earlier about your own journey. Taking
Hmm.
that first step is often the hardest part because there's a fear
Yeah.
in there, fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Sometimes even more so than just the fear of failure. Like, what do I do if I fail at this? And then I think about, some of the sports reference that, you were talking about earlier, in our conversation. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah.
So, and it sounds very simple. And I myself have not started on a couple journeys that I probably should have taken. Um, you know, but then I was
Ah,
just I was just writing a letter actually to my father, who's going to be on one of the honor flights for his service through
mm,
in the Air Force. And I was reflecting on choices, right? and how they all kind of build up to who you are. So even if you chose not to do something, that still adds into where you kind of currently are. Now, it might not be the right choice, right? But I try to live with like no regrets. So I think, I'd love to hear just, a little bit more about like, okay, so here I am, potential client. What's one of the first steps you like to take in kind of introducing what you do?
Well, probably a good place to start, Nick, is if we were having a conversation, I would say, hey, what is an area like you just mentioned? There's a couple journeys that you haven't started on. I was like, man, I'm going to talk with Nick about these. But so that's where I'd start. I'd say, hey,
Yeah.
what's an area of life that you want to improve, or what's a goal that you've had for a long time that you haven't, it's important, you want to pursue it, but you haven't found that motivation.
Mhm.
And it hasn't really gotten better. An area where you have stalled, that's really comes down to these, what are you believing about this, behind
Mhm.
this? And how do you tap into those values, which your values are your sources of motivation that are going to be the engine, the fuel that drives you forward towards it. And so really we're going to start with a place that you feel that you recognize there's a lack of potential. You recognize that I haven't been pursuing this part of my life isn't the way that I want it to be,
Mhm.
because that's where we're going to start to explore and to pursue the goal, but also help you become the person who you need to be to reach that goal.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a lot of people that I work with. I think I shared off the air that I do have a career support group that I
Mm.
network with each week. And we talk about, people that are without a job or people that are currently with a job and looking to make those changes. And some of this stuff that you're talking about, or most of it, would be very practical to share with them.
Hmm.
So when you think about just something in that regard, so like here I am, let's say I'm looking for, a satisfying career, um, you know, in something that I'm passionate about. How do you help a client maybe that's having those types of like career issues? Seems very top of mind with, COVID kind of ending, but not really ending. And then this quiet quitting that we were hearing about and a whole bunch of other things in regards to like, you know, work environment.
Yeah. You mean in just having difficulty at their job, or at a place of transition
Yeah,
where they're asking these
feeling
questions?
stuck maybe is what
Mm.
I'm hearing a lot of,
Yeah.
either, at a current position or, I've been out of work for so long, but and
Mhm.
feel free to kind of put in, your own kind of scenario, maybe if someone that you're working or have worked with through an issue that you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exactly, I mean, the people that I work with, Nick, my
Hmm.
clients are ones who have been stuck.
Right.
And so those are the people to say, hey, oh, you're stuck. Well, so where I go with that, I go directly for values. And so values are a bit of a fancy word, a business word that's often thrown around with like culture and everything.
Right.
But really, your individual values are the aspects, the things in your life that you feel are most important. These are the deepest desires that you have. And if we define this for you, for an individual, your unique compilation, and then help you to align with these values. For people, it's different, right?
Hmm.
Oftentimes it comes to aspirational values like joy and peace and connection with others. But whatever it is, it's always a positive thing. These values,
Hmm.
they're always good. They're always really beautiful things that come up from people. And then when a person has that defined, and we say, okay, what would this look like practically in your life? Right? So if we've got the deeper motivation, and then what would this look like practically, tangibly in your life? That's where we get the specifics.
Hmm.
Where we get the specifics enough, about goals, right? Setting SMART goals. Number one is it has to be specific. And so when we define this, well, then suddenly they have the motivation and suddenly they have a direction. And so even that, from a person who's stuck, you know, takes 20 minutes to define these things, wow, suddenly they have a direction to go and they have a reason to get there.
And this happens instantly after one conversation with you, right?
Well, the realization can come, the
Yeah.
breakthrough can come, but of course, the reason we got ourselves stuck is because of unhealthy habits, of patterns of thinking, ways of dealing with our emotions that got us into negative spiraling loops that have got us to this place. And so I can, point them in the right direction, but essentially, if we're going to work together, it's like, okay, let's find out what are the habits that you're going to need to help you move in that direction to perform as a peak performer, to perform highly and better, and to create, upward spiraling loops rather than downward ones.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think part of my challenge is just probably identifying which spiral I want to take, whether it's up, down, or sideways. That's always been my sort of issue personally, is like, I think I start so many different things, right? And then you find yourself very spread out, right? So all right, we've talked a little bit about you. We've talked a little bit about your leadership program and your ideals. Like, what's like something that someone can help you with, right? So if my listener's listening and goes, "Hey, I really like what this guy's doing. How can I help him?" What's something you're looking for from maybe our audience or the world?
Yeah. Well, so my passion to change lives, to make a difference, Nick. What I can do is, I have a webinar that I offer every month, and you can find out about it at lionheartleadership.ca. That's Canadian domain /webinar. And
Nice.
so lionheartleadership.ca /webinar. And there, I give a workshop talking about some of these things that we talked about today. Finding the positive message behind your negative emotions, tapping into that resourcefulness and that potential that you have within you, overcoming those barriers. And so here I give a process to really break that down. And so if your listeners have gotten value from this and they say, "Hey, I enjoy this conversation," come to the webinar where you can see me face to face, and then we can have a conversation from there.
That's a great idea, and I'll definitely include that in the show notes as well. Just take a little note to myself to make sure I include additional URL for you. So you can check that webinar out, and I strongly urge you to listen to Orrin. This is our second conversation, and I still want to hear more. So is there anything that I'm like missing that I haven't asked you that you're just dying to tell our audience about you or this program?
Nick, I think I shared my passion over our last few minutes together, my passion of my story and how that has brought me to this place of, hey, I want to pass on what I have learned. We've talked about the keys of my program, the values, the beliefs that you have about yourself, and the resources and the resourcefulness. And so this really is a good nutshell, I think, that we've put all these things in.
Well, great. So I urge my listeners to reach out and connect with Orrin. I think that you've been on a journey, my friend. You're still on a journey, and I love that you're trying to bring people along and doing what a real leader is supposed to do, and kind of leading by example, but also giving opportunities for others to step in and take some control, not only of their lives but of the people around them. So you've been an absolute terrific guest, and again, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific too, and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.